Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to this week's Let's Talk Dairy webinar. So today I'm joined by Rosarii O'Connor and Mairead O'Neill from Munster Bovine. We're going to talk about milk recording. So today is the 3rd of March and it's about time people start thinking about doing recordings, and a lot of people have actually started the process of recording or going about doing a recording in the next few days. So there's always these bits and pieces of things floating around in social media in relation to DIY in particular, because obviously you're doing the recording yourself, and maybe if there's a problem cropping up and so forth, how to deal with these, and they're a source of frustration for people. So that's why I asked Rosarii and Mairead to come on to talk to me today about that, because we want to try and get people enthusiastic about recording in particular, and frame of mind is a very important piece in relation to going about doing a recording in the first place as well. So I suppose I'll start with you, Rosarii, in terms of it's recommended that we would be recording very early, and look, it's perceived as being a problem, we'll say, but why do we want to record early first, and then how do we'll say overcome the things are manic at the moment on farm? So what's your thinking on it? Or so we're pushing people to do recording. Is it easy to do, I suppose?
Well, the thing about milk recording is there is a time invested in doing milk recording, but there's a fantastic return for that time that you invest in milk recording, and especially in early milk recording. The message really has got out about late milk recording. People are, they're doing a milk recording closer to dry off than they used to. But the early milk recording is very important because you'll see how your dry period worked. And the other thing it will show you where you are nutritionally with your cows going into the breeding period. And it's very important that your cows are in a good place nutritionally going into the breeding period. And you'll get all of that from an early milk recording. Now, I accept that this time of the year, there's cows not going to the tank, there's cows still calving. It is awkward, but it is very, very well worth the time that you invest in milk recording. You'll get a fantastic return for that time that you put into the early milk recording.
And why wouldn't you wait, Rosarii would say, being devil's advocate here now, like why wouldn't you wait till every cow is calved to do the first one?
Well, you see, especially from a cell count point of view. So if you record a cow, preferably within 30 days, but definitely within 60 days of calving, you will know how your dry period has gone. And this is getting so important now with the whole selective dry cow. You really do need to know early on if there's a problem with cell count. Because if there's a problem with cell count, or if there's individual cows in trouble, first of all, you need to look at those cows, but you also need to stop it spreading. And I mean, this is a critical time of the year. If you have a problem, that it doesn't spread to other cows. So an early milk recording will tell you all that. And it will also tell you how your cows are doing. I mean, what your protein levels are like, what your lactose levels are like. That will give you a great indication of the nutritional, what state your cows are in nutritionally.
Okay, very good. I suppose just to deal with the inconvenience of it, we'll say at this time of the year. So as you said, you ideally, like I suppose 42 days is your kind of 30 to 42 days is your ideal scenario. So that's 6 weeks. So we'll say if we look at the herds down around the city in Cork, obviously they could be hitting the 6 weeks, or they could be gone to 6 weeks at this stage. And as we move, I suppose, up around Mallow, as we move up the country, we're beginning to kind of push back in terms of the start of calving date. So we're probably maybe just in the thick of things now, really. How do we convince people that to go about doing this recording piece now, like we'll say, as calves dropping on the ground outside, maybe in the straw beds, and you're inside trying to milk record as well?
Well, you see, there's things you can do to make it, like if you put a bit of preparation in advance, right? So freeze bends at the moment, right? The hair grows over the winter. So it's very hard to reach freeze bends at the moment. But if you clip the cows in advance, you're halfway there. If you don't have an issue with cow identification, you're halfway there with milk recording already, because you're not jumping up, you're not getting the clippers, you're not going around with curry combs. So that's one thing you can definitely do in advance, is clip the cows. The other thing you can do is make sure that the heifer numbers are right on ICBF, so that when you get the handheld, that you'll get the right cow numbers up in the handheld. So you won't be coming up with any wrong cow identification. And the other thing you can do then is have a look at the video. We've done videos. They're very, very good. Like we did the videos, during COVID when people got no training or whatever. So those videos, just to remind you, again, because it's a long time since the last recording. So just to remind yourself. So if you do that bit of preparation in advance, it will make the whole milk recording thing will go a lot smoother.
Okay. And just on the day of the recording, then we'll say itself what needs to happen on the farm, I suppose.
Now, the thing about the day of the recording is, what we do in milk recording is we take a representative sample of what each cow produces in the 24-hour period. So we need to get a representative, the milk recording has to be representative of a regular 24 hours in the cows, because we do all our calculations based on the fact that this is what the cow normally does, okay? So if you're milking twice a day, you have to record twice a day. Now, most people are only taking a sample at one milking. They take a yielded sample at one milking, and they take a yield at the second milking. But the interval between those milkings, we do calculations based on the interval. And what we do then for that 24 hours is cows are put in lactation curve, and we do calculations based on the lactation curve. So it's very important that the milk recording is representative of what is actually happening on the farm.
So we'll say you often hear people maybe manipulating the time a small bit, maybe milking a bit earlier in the morning of the evening recording and kind of milking a little bit later the following morning. What's that doing for them, we'll say? Is it just giving them a false result? So
Well, what it does, right? So if you mess with the intervals, what you'll do is you potentially can inflate the yield for one milking though.
yes.
But remember, cows will regulate themselves in the second milking.
Yeah.
You know, cows will give you what they have. So you potentially get a higher yield at one milking. But the other thing to remember about that is you'll get a deflated fat. If you get inflated yield, you get deflated fat.
Okay, so that's a common issue that you get putty as well about the fats not being necessarily accurate. As
exactly,
the suggestion is that they're not accurate. Like,
but if you inflate yield and you sample at that, so you inflate yield and you sample at that milking, you'll deflate fat.
Okay.
So there's a direct relationship between yield and fat. And the milk recording assumes that the day of the milk recording is a standard day. It's the same as every other day. And all our calculations are based on that. So it's very important that the day that you do a milk recording, it's representative of every other day.
Okay. Okay, so Mairead, I'm going to come to you now. On the day of the recording, so we'll say you're involved in kind of troubleshooting, and maybe you've been recording yourself even as well. So on the day of the recording, we'll say your technician is going to drop off the meters. What tips would you give people, like Rosarie's saying about clip and freeze brands and so forth now, in terms of having the cows prepared? What does the farmer have to do to be prepared for the actual process of recording, in your opinion?
Well, on the day of the recording, the minute that the farmer gets the meters or whichever, I would definitely say to go away and hang the meters up the minute they land on the farm, because that way, if anything happens during the rest of the day and you're running a few minutes late going for the cows, you're not landed with the notion of, oh crap, I have to go in and strip all the units down now as well. So at least then, if you haven't plumbed and you're ready to go when it's time for milking. And the other thing I would definitely say is to give a read down through the operation sheets that the technicians leave, because that'll just give you a kind of a quick overview of the steps involved. And if you have time when you're in for your tea to maybe have a look at the video, because the videos, they're only 4 minutes long, and they do give you kind of a quick brief overview of the steps involved, because if it's been a couple of months since you did your last recording, you'll just forget a couple of the steps or whatever. So it'll just give you a quick kind of refresher course before you take off again for the evening.
Okay, very good. Just in terms of the organising of the day of the recording and getting yourself ready then as well. So you have the machine set up, kind of, you have your meters plumbed up, as you said, correctly and ready to go. What you need to do with it, just to, like, I suppose you need to get your head in the right place, really, don't you?
Yeah, you definitely have to be prepared for the recording, like so. And if you're getting help in for the day, definitely have the help organised in advance. So like all those things can definitely help with having a smooth recording. But it is also important to remember that the milk recording is going to add a couple of minutes, like 15 minutes to your milking, like, so you always have to keep that in the back of your mind, like. So definitely the day of the recording, don't be saying, oh, I have to be at a match at such a time, because the day that you start rushing, like, that's when things are going to go completely wrong, like. So it just take your time and be nice and calm and relaxed. And at the end of the day, there's only 4 days in the year, so like, if you can just take your time and just be prepared for it, it should have a smooth recording, hopefully.
So in reality, like if your normal milking time is 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, you'd want to be thinking going at least, as you say, getting set up a good half hour ahead of time anyway. To
You'd
plug
want to be
meters
getting
and
you'd want to be getting your head in gear, kind of getting psyched up for the recording definitely in advance. So yeah, if you head away for the cows a few minutes early, just to give yourself a bit of wiggle room. Once you're ready to milk in, just come back and give yourself a few minutes to get the meters activated. So turn them on, push up the wash valve, wait for the data handler to tell you that the meters have been activated. So like a couple of extra minutes just activating the meters will definitely make all the difference when you let the cows into the parlour. And then another thing that I always do when I'm recording is once I have the meters activated, before I let the cows in, I'll wipe down all the barcode readers just to give them a clean, because if you've wetted the parlour, whatever, you're going to get splashes of water on the barcode readers, and that's going to throw up barcode errors. So you'll get a dirty barcode error because there might be like a splatter of water on the barcode. So like if you have them all wiped down before you let the cows in, that should reduce the number of errors that you're getting in the first row of cows.
Okay, and I was saying when I was talking to Rosarii yesterday, like there's a way of checking the record that the meter is working on that first row as well, just to get you set up. That people should ask their technician to show them as well, it's kind of troubleshooting the meter before you're well into recording.
Yeah.
Just coming, you've mentioned the dirty barcodes now, and that's something that I know Mary was mad about in terms of people complaining about them. So you said like I thought it was interesting yesterday when we were talking about this, that like people are saying there's no dirt there, but there's actually water could be the problem there. And you're saying to have a cloth or have a piece of paper in your pocket the whole time to keep them clean and dry, like dry in particular, like.
Yeah, so like the barcode, like they're unavoidable, because like you can get a spatter of water, or like urine or dung will come off the cow and it'll spatter onto these, and it'll only be like a little speck on the corner of the barcode reader, and that'll affect the barcode being able to read it, and you'll get this error that says a dirty barcode. But like I always have a paper towel or a cloth in my pocket. So like once you get that error, just pull out your cloth, give it a quick wipe down, press select on the meter, and it'll work away again. But they are unavoidable because, as I said, like the other thing is to take it easy with the volume washer during the milk recording. We don't want any fireman Sams spraying water everywhere, just take it easy, just keep the water close to the ground, because the volume washer does spatter on it, and you are going to generate more dirty barcodes with that.
Okay, very good. And just on the errors then, as I said, like the reason I wanted to talk to you today was to try and, I suppose, debunk a few myths and dispel a few myths around it. The air holes getting blocked is the other problem that I won't say commonly occurs, but occurs during recordings. And like you said, if people's frame of mind is wrong going in the first place and they get one or two of these, they get very frustrated very quickly. So what's the solution to dealing with them then?
The air hole blocked is usually associated, I'd see them predominantly with parlours that have the ACRs. So like the air hole is a tiny little hole that's above where you attach on the bottle. It's only a little pinhole. So that draws air into the meter to agitate the sample. And then once the sample is filling, it dispels the air out from the bottle to give the milk space to fill the bottle. But so they are, as I said, usually seen with ACRs. So the problem with the ACRs is that you might have pressed finish milking before you've released the vacuum onto the cluster. So you have to re-engage the vacuum to the meter to allow it to agitate and stuff, because vacuum is needed for the meter to agitate, drain, and to sample. So if you have ACRs, just be sure to engage the vacuum before you press the finish milking, and it should minimize the number of those errors that you get. Now, they are tiny air holes, so they can get blocked with a bit of dirt or whatever. So the other thing is, just when you finish in the evening milking, just give those little bottle holders just a quick spray of water as you're washing down your clusters, and again in the morning, and that'll just minimize the number of errors that you get with the dirty, with the air hole blocked. But definitely, if you have the ACRs, turn on the vacuum before you press finish milking.
Okay, very good. And then we'll say, okay, we've kind of covered those errors, but just so we'll go back to as if we're about to start recording again. Then, is there anything we should be watching out for at that stage? And the other thing is coming back to what you were saying about pushing up the wash valve. We'll say like, is there a risk people doing that too quickly is going to create problems for the meters, which will subsequently create problems for them as well?
Well, so as you activate the meter will tell you, the data handler will tell you that the meter has been activated. So wait for each meter to activate and then move on to the next meter. So the data handler will give you the instructions and just follow the instructions the data handler is giving you. It might take a couple of minutes, but like those extra few minutes at the start when you're activating the meters will make all the difference. If you are getting help on the day of the recording, though, I would definitely recommend that everyone decides before the cows come into the parlour who's doing what. So and once that decision is made, nobody decide that, oh, I want to do your job now. You should really stay in your lane. So if you're in charge of the data handler and the bottles, you're looking after the data handler and the bottles, and whoever's milking the cows is milking the cows. And just don't start arguing about who's doing what job and how they're doing what job, because the milk recording will dissolve into chaos. So it's important that everyone stays in their lane and make that decision before the cows come in, so that you're doing the data handler and you become the designated milk recorder for the evening.
Very good. Yeah, there's some talk of marriages coming close to divorce cases over milk recordings. All right, so but that's just bad communication. Obviously, they need to take a step back. So, just for anyone that has designated milk recorder for recording, what would they usually be expecting when they land on the farm from the recorder then?
So like if you're doing the recording on the data handler for the evening, so if I'm doing it, I usually set myself up in the dairy, like away from the cows, so where it's clean and you can avoid cow spatter. You should really try to keep the bottles as clean as possible, because they do have to get tested in the lab after. So like before you go handling the bottles, whatever, just give your gloves a dry down with like a paper towel. What I usually do then is I uncap all the bottles and I put the caps into my bottles, or into my pocket. So if I'm doing 60 cows, I'll uncap 60 bottles and I'll put those caps into my pocket so that I have them when I'm inside in the pit, because I just find it's fierce awkward trying to uncap the bottles and then change bottles inside in the pit. So I just find it quicker. So then if you do uncap too many bottles, then just recap them then at the end of the milking. It won't take you but a couple of seconds and then the other thing I do is once I'm entering the parlour, I only ever carry in the number of bottles that's in the row. So if there's 10 cows in the row, so those bottle carriers, some of them can take 24, 32. But if you've only 10 cows in the row, there's no point filling up your carrier with 32 bottles. Take in your 10 bottles and then you can go down, and once you finish that row that you've changed your 10 bottles. But if you're missing a bottle, it's very easy to run back through the meters and find out which bottle you missed. So it's important just to kind of
cross check for you,
just as you're going down through it, because if you have 32 bottles inside in it, then you're like, oh, I don't know, am I missing a cow from this row or was it the last row? So it's just important just to keep just to have those little tips.
Okay, and then they will say the very first row when we're starting, and as I said, getting off to a good start is going to be half the battle, obviously. Do you put in the cow numbers first, or do you start milking and then put in the cow numbers and start putting up your bottles, or what's the best, most efficient way of getting through it?
So the way that I do it is I find it the most efficient is I always stay behind whoever's milking. So they'll go down and they'll put on all the clusters, and then I'll go down after them and then I'll put in all the cow information. Sorry. If you're doing it yourself, I would definitely recommend to go put on all the clusters, and then you have a few minutes to put in your cow numbers into the data handler. And once you have the cow numbers in then and the cow is milking, just be watching the meters to make sure that there's no select light on the meters, because the select light will warn you if there is an error on the meter. So if their select light comes on, just press select on the meter and check your data handler, and the data handler will give you the full instructions of how to clear the error, what the error is. But if you are on the data handler, that's what you need to be watching for the whole time, is just to see is there select lights coming up. And if a select light come up, just press the meter and then find out what it is and then go through the instructions to clear the error.
So that, I suppose, just emphasises, Mairead, the importance of having that extra bit of help. We'll say, like, the idea of DIY is that you're probably not getting a designated recorder with you, but you do still need help. And unless you happen to have 10 cows and a 10-unit milking parlour and you're only doing the one row, it's not realistic to take on milk recording on your own.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to be doing on your own.
Yeah, well, there's just too many moving parts, really, isn't it? To be tackling milking and trying to keep an eye on cows, And all the while then, as you said, there could be something popping up that if you're aware of it, you can be ahead of it.
Yeah.
Everything's going well, but say a meter does start to give a problem, like, because obviously the technology is technology and things often give a bit of bother. So what do you do in that situation then?
So if you do need to change the meter, now it doesn't happen that often, but if it does happen, the important thing is to just stay calm. Like, it's going to take you a few minutes to get the meter switched out and get the replacement meter brought in. So go out, pick up your spare meters, because the technicians will leave spare meters. So go out, get your spare meter, bring it in and put it hanging, and then disconnect the other meter and replumb it. Now make sure that you're not panicking, and that you do plumb it the same way as the rest of the meters in the parlour, so you plumb it up correctly. Then get your data handler. Now you have to activate this meter. So you have to press your select and push up the wash valve, the same as you would have been doing at the start of the milking before the cows came into the parlour. So this is going to take a few seconds to get the meters activated. So once you have the meter activated, it'll tell you meter whichever is activated, and then you can put the cluster on the cow, and then you can put in the number, the cow number, and press select, and it'll work away fine. But if you do have to change out a meter, be sure to let the technicians know, and that way then they can do the checks on it so that it doesn't go out onto another farm.
Okay, yeah, to take a note of the meter that gave a bit of problems, and just leave the note on the book for the technician. Anything else so that we should be conscious of, I suppose, around the whole washing process, maybe, etc. Like, I mean, the importance of even having the meters clean going back is important, but washing them correctly as well.
Yeah, so definitely I would say that, like, as soon as you finish your morning milking, like, to just get everything done. So, like, as the machine's washing, like, just get a cloth or a sponge and go in and wipe down the outside of all the meters, and just give the bottle holder a sprinkle of water, and your bottle carrier, just give that a quick wash down. And then as soon as the machine has finished washing, just strip down all the meters and put your parlour back to the way it is, to the way it was, so that you're ready for the milking in the evening. Because realistically, like, if you go off checking other stuff, you'll forget about it, and you'll be down the field later and you're like, oh crap, the meters. So just get everything stripped down and get everything put away, get your equipment, get all the stuff that the EDIY technician will be collecting, have that all put to one side and clean, so that they can just come in and collect it and head away. And then the last thing I would say is just to wash down the hosing for your meters, and then you can put them all into a bag together, like a feed bag, or just tie them with a bit of baler twine and put them in a safe place that you'll remember for the next recording. But don't put them in a place that you'll spend the next 8 weeks climbing over them either. So just make sure that there's some place that you have them for the next time.
And is it important to keep them kind of dust free then as well, Mairead, in terms of, like, if there's dust going to get into them, is it going to get into the meter the next time you use them potentially?
Well, it is, like, it's important to keep them clean and kind of dirt free, because, like, if stuff gets into the hosing, then that's going to be pumped into the meter at the next recording, so that could cause problems then. So it's important to keep them clean and ready for the recording.
Very good. So there's just 2 questions in there. So there's one question there that's saying any photos of the demonstration. So we will refer people to the videos that are available on the website, I presume, are them, right? Is it?
Yeah, they're on the Munster Bovine website, and I think they're on the Munster Bovine YouTube page as well.
Yeah,
very good. Yeah. And then, Rosarii, question for you, I suppose. Kevin Kelleher saying that he delays doing his first recording until the weather kind of straightens out a bit, because he doesn't have a lot of grass in the diet and his protein will be quite low at the moment, and he doesn't want to be recording that as such. So would you have any comment to make on that?
Absolutely. We have cows on a lactation curve. This is very, very important. This is how we can calculate a cow's yield for 4 milk recordings, because we put cows in a lactation curve. We know that cows don't have high protein at this point in the year. So that's all taken into account with the lactation curve. That's how we can do a predicted 305 after 1 milk recording. So we take that into account, so that will not come against the cow for the year. If you do a milk recording and the protein is low, like in the same way that we don't need to catch the peak. Yes. People have this idea that you have to do a milk recording at peak. You don't. We know when a cow will peak. We take the lactation number into account, and we take the calving date into account. So we have lactation curves. That's how we can do calculations on 4 tests. So we take that all into account when we're doing our calculations. So irrespective of what time of the year you do the milk recording, the lactation curve knows what point the cow is on in the curve.
So that would say, just coming back to Kevin's point, so say the cow protein is at 330 or something in the first recording, and if there was grass in the diet, she was going to be at 350. His overall 305 predicted isn't going to change dramatically.
No.
And just becomes more accurate with each recording that's done subsequently.
Exactly. Well, obviously, the more points you have in the curve, the more accurate the curve will be. And obviously, people that are recording longer, it becomes more accurate. The more data we have, the more accurate it becomes. But the lactation curves are very accurate.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So I suppose, to be fair, there's some of the co-ops have some incentives brought in. So Dairygold have been incentivizing milk recording with probably 3 years now, I think it is. Kerry have made it mandatory from this year on for people to record, and again, there's an incentive associated with it. And as we move up the country, Arrivo have also brought in an incentive there, and some of the other co-ops are looking at it at the moment as well. So there's obviously an increased demand. In particular, we know that there's been an increased demand through the sustainability bonus, through Dairygold and so forth. So that's creating a bit of a demand for people, for ye as well. So it's a real chicken and an egg scenario. You need the demand for the recording to employ the people, and then people will be saying, well, we can't get recording done because there aren't people. So I suppose 2 things in that then, Rosarii, like if people if they still have the option as to whether they do record or not this year, depending on what co-op they're supplying, they need to, if they're deciding to record, which we would be very strongly recommending to people in the light of in the context of selective, in the context of carbon emissions and everything, and making sure that, and in context of the cost of keeping cows this year, it's so important that you're not keeping a dud basically around the place. What we'll say you're going to be, you need to know what kind of a level of demand you're going to have for recording for the year, and you also now need to go recruiting people to kind of satisfy that demand. So do you want to speak about that maybe for a minute?
Yeah, no, we have a lot of applications in for milk recording already. So we have a high level of demand this year for people wanting to join milk recording. So at the moment we're currently recruiting. So anybody that's interested in milk recording, if you send your CV to careers@munsterbovine.ie. Now, this year, we don't take on students, but we will be taking on students this year. The thing about milk recording, being a milk recorder, whether it's DIY training or a manual milk recorder, there is flexibility around it. What milk recording works well is when whatever else you're doing fits in with it. So that's when milk recording really works well for everybody, for us and for the recorder. There is flexibility around the days. So like if you've only 2 days a week to give to milk recording, or 3 days, or whatever it is, or I have people doing it 6 days a week, I have people doing it every second week. But what's not flexible is the farmer's milking times. It has to happen, at the farmer's milking time. So you have to be free morning and evening. But the days, how many days a week you do it, what days you do it, that part is very flexible. So it really does work well for people. And when we get people in and they get into it, like it really works. What we have found is, we'll say, young people that are in the process of, coming home and taking over farms and working on farms. It's a fantastic experience for those type of people. It's really like getting paid to be educated, because you get all the experience of seeing what's happening on other farms, and you get paid for it. Like I had one milk recorder, and she described it as, it's like getting a farm walk every day. You get paid for it. and big farmers. So there's different types of people that it suits, and people with absolutely no experience. I have had recorders literally come into the yard, and white runners that have never been inside the milking parlour. They make fantastic recorders because they have no preconception about what's involved, and you tell them what to do and they do it, and they make fantastic recorders, and they're fierce interested in the whole thing. So really, there's fantastic opportunities. And if you contact us in Munster or send in your CV to careers@munsterbovine.ie.
Very good. And there's just one final question then, Rosarii, I suppose, and a valid one, to be fair. If, as I said, today is the 3rd of March and recording is getting going, if somebody rings the office this morning or rings their technician to say that they want to do a recording, what's the lead time, I suppose, in terms of getting the recording done, and what way are you fixed in terms of results, or how fast can you turn around? I know you have objectives around it, like so.
Yeah. So look, at the moment, we'll say up to Paddy's Day, right? You if you're looking for recording now, you'll get it, reasonably soon. But from Paddy's Day, the month of April, they're really the month of April and the month of October are the 2 busiest months of milk recording, because kind of everyone starts together and everyone finishes together. So there is a longer lead time, at peak time. But this time of the year now, we'll say up to Paddy's Day. Now, of course, it all depends on the weather too. If the weather gets fine, you can have a mad rush in it. So there is a lead time at the peak times, and getting back the results, you'll be talking about 5 working days, which would be kind of a week. With it, that would be the aim.
Yeah, so it was actually one of the milk advisors with the co-op now that put in the question there. He's just saying that it's important that people, that maybe if they have a concern about a cell count problem or something like that, that they're realistic in terms of the time frame that
and that they get going. Yeah, get going now. If you get going now, that there's plenty of capacity now. But really, from Paddy's Day to the month of April, you need to be booking your milk recording in advance.
So we need to flatten the curve a small bit and try and get people to pull back early now. And obviously with the bank holidays, the double bank holiday around Patrick's Day is going to be a problem as well, I suppose, in that
sense. Definitely. Yeah. And the way it's leading into a weekend.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So just the final piece, I suppose, Rosarii, like the real important thing that we've been trying to emphasize is that, 1, milk recording is a fantastic resource when it's used correctly. 2, I suppose, Mairead has acknowledged it there, and you've acknowledged it as well, that it does add time to milking, and we won't be trying to tell anybody that it's not going to do that. So you have to prepare and allow for that. And then the final piece is that you need to kind of have a positive attitude towards it, going at it, in order for it to be a success. And if you do that, then generally speaking, you're going to have a fairly trouble-free kind of scenario. And depending on people's choices, it is a minimum of 4 recordings. I suppose ideally we'd like to see people doing more probably, but at least if people were doing 4 recordings, it would be very positive, I suppose. And the information then, I suppose that's the next step. So you and ourselves in Teagasc, obviously, and milk advisors with co-ops will be in a position to help people make decisions. And there are some stark decisions to be made maybe as well, I suppose, from your experience, aren't there?
Absolutely. Particularly for people that are joining milk recording, for people that are milk recording with a long time, they will, the herd is usually reasonably stable, but the variation for people, especially people that have had no form of recording yield in the parlour, it is absolutely unbelievable. The variation in cows in those types of herds. So there's an awful lot to be gained from it. I mean, doing the milk recording will do nothing really for you. It's looking at the results. It's well worth putting in the effort the day of the milk recording to get a good result from your milk recording. But then you also have to put in the effort into analysing the milk recording. But there's an awful lot of help available.
Yeah, and to be fair, for people that aren't familiar with it, like people that are recording will be getting the colour reports, as we call them. But they're a fantastic resource in terms of identifying those poor performers. And I suppose that the last thing I'll ask you is to tell me the story again that you told me the other day about the 2 cows with 3 days of a difference in the calving interval, or calving date. Sorry.
This was a farmer. I just went through his report, was in there during the week. Joined milk recording last year, was their first year doing milk recording. They did DIY, got on very well with it. But there was 2 cows calved within 3 days of each other, 2 third lactation cows, and there was 79 kgs of milk solids in 230 days between the 2 cows. It's a phenomenal difference between 2 cows.
And just to put that into context, there's talk of €6 per kg of milk solids, that's €480 of a difference between two cows.
For two cows that are doing the very same thing, they're costing you the very same thing. Would you make that much more out of one cow versus another? And in this particular case, the cow, we'll say with the lower kgs, had very good percentages, but the yield was just nothing there. And people that have no form of recording equipment in the parlour, they're going by the bags. They look at the bag or how long they take to milk. It's no indication of what a cow is doing.
Very good. So look, we'll be coming back to it, I suppose, in terms of following up on the reports piece throughout the course of the year with Don and some of and with Dennis and Martin maybe as well. I'd like to thank you both for coming on this morning. I think it's been useful in terms of trying to get people's heads into the right frame of mind and remind people again that we need to get going at this early. And okay, it is going to be slightly inconvenient, but the pain is going to be worth it in terms of the gain, especially around cell count at this stage of the time. And I suppose Kevin's point in relation to his protein at the minute, you've kind of dealt with that in that it's not a concern. Like, so cell count being caught early in the season means that it's a much better run for the whole year potentially. So milk recording early is a win-win for everybody. So thanks again, Rosarii, for coming on, and thanks, Mairead, as well, for your time. And we'll be back next week, and we'll probably look at some synchronization protocols, as there's a lot of talk about it next week. So we wish you well for the week. Lovely day here in Kilmallock, where I am today. Hope it's nice where you are. Have a good week farming, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Stuart. Thank you.
Bye.